Superman and Lois, episode 4, Haywire. Man, I love this show still. It's been really consistently fun and interesting. This episode, I think more than any of the ones we saw previously, really focused on the non-superhero aspect of the character, which I know some people might be like, "Aw, man, that sucks," but I'm like, that's great. Because we got a lot of great developments with a lot of characters, you know? This, to me, was the most any of the episodes so far have felt like a classic episode of Smallville. We're dealing with the kid in high school. He's got powers. He wants to save a friend, but he can't really do that. Something happens to the friend. That's the storyline of all of Smallville pretty much. And it looked pretty good in here. I thought that was very cool, very fun. It was just a solid episode. We get a lot of classic stuff with Lois Lane again. I always talk about Lois Lane at the beginning of these reviews because I just think she is crushing it. Elizabeth Tulloch has just been proving that she is really good at this character. The writing staff really gets this character. She's doing a phenomenal job of portraying this version of Lois Lane, and I think it's very cool to see. Again, she's getting more threats if they publish the paper. The lawyers are coming in to stop her. All this great stuff like that. It's really fun to see. She has some great moments with Morgan Edge. A lot of Morgan Edge in this episode, which makes me realize we are fully going down the rabbit hole of Intergang, aren't we? Intergang gets referenced in this episode. Morgan Edge got some powerful people working with him. Like, we're literally setting up Morgan Edge as a bad guy, as a big bad in this world. Not just like your political bad guy who might not fix an old town, but he's going to be true evil, which I like a lot. The actor playing Morgan Edge, by the way, he just did great. Just absolutely great to see that creepy, smarmy business side of things. Really fun to see that. I really liked it. But a majority of this episode focused on the relationship of Jordan and John. Again, like something we're seeing throughout this show is these two are trying to find their own. You know, like they're kind of essentially switching roles from what they were in Metropolis. You know, John is suddenly the unpopular kid. Jordan's the one getting all the praise. They walk into, like, you know, Pop's shop. I say it's Pop's shop because everybody's doing their version of Pop's in a show like this. It's the CW. You know, they go to like their, whatever, it's a random diner. Every small town's got a diner in a CW property for some reason, but they go to a diner. Everyone's like, Jordan, 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 and John's the one who's kind of off to the sidelines, not really doing anything or being a part of like the fun or the kerfuffle. I get it. I think that's a really cool... You're just switching up those roles, and I think nobody saw it coming, but it works really well for what they were doing. I really enjoy that. And like I said, this has kind of that, like, villain of the week feel that we saw in Smallville. So the villain of this week, essentially, in terms of, like, the high school stuff, was Tag. Now, Tag was at, like, the bonfire where he broke his arm from what happened to Jordan, and suddenly he's getting really frustrated that he can't make the plays. Like, him and John are kind of like on the outskirts, not really being able to actually be on the football field because they're doing stuff with Jordan and everyone else. So he's kind of getting angry and frustrated at the coach, at himself, at everyone involved in like the whole sporting event. And he doesn't really know what to do or what to be a part of, which I'm like, that's pretty fun. Before we finish this story, I just want to say, the opening scene of this episode where like we're just like in a rainy football field, everyone's like super dramatic, like just watching this game, that was the best looking shot of the entire episode. It's so weird, like they did football right. A Superman show did football right, and I thought it looked great. It was just really very impressive. And Tag, again, he's there with John. He's on the sidelines. They're not really a part of the thing. He's like, yeah, our team's doing great, but he wishes it was him. He's like, I could have made that play. I could have caught that ball. I could have done all of this stuff. But because his arm is broken, he can't have the chance. And, you know, just like anybody in Smallville, like that TV series, he gets some powers manifesting for some reason, so we kind of figure out what they are later, but he starts to have like this weird frequency where his hand starts to shake, and he can like speed up, and it's like a slicing tool, kind of like the Flash if this Flash was like a buzzsaw. Very funny. You think he's going to go down the rabbit hole of being the bad guy, but he's not really. Superman does come in to stop him before anything bad happens, which again, subverting the idea that we are going to show like the villain of the week with that character. We're not. He gets the help. It looks like there's a school that helps metahumans in this world. That's kind of cool. An interesting thing to set up. I can't wait to see what that's going to be like. Because we're teasing that. It's got to come back at some point. Maybe not in this season, but they're setting it up a little bit like, yeah, maybe we'll go to a Titans Academy somewhere in the world. Maybe. Wouldn't be surprised if that's the route they went down. Very fun stuff. Tag, a character that you knew something was going to happen with. It happened here. It was pretty fun to see. I thought that was very cool. Again, the Lois Lane stuff, fantastic. The John and Jordan stuff, very well done, very creative. I'm loving this series, man. It's really capturing this perfect essence and quality that these characters have, the charm about them all, the interesting part about them all, and it's really cool. But there's a lot of characters who get some play in here that we didn't see have a lot of play before. One of them being General Lane, which I was like, how sparingly are they going to use General Lane? Because he could easily just be like that guy that shows up with the exposition dump. But here he's like, there's a big, this whole episode is pretty much this idea like Clark has an obligation to the world to do the right thing. So the fact that you, Lois, and your sons want him for certain things is going to hinder a lot of his progress with saving people. Like, there's a great moment in that idea too, where, you know, their grandfather, Sam Lane's talking to like John and Jordan. He's like, you know, your dad does a lot of good. He's the most important person in the world, probably ever. There's going to be times when you're going to have to let him go when you might need him. So you have to be sparing with what you do to save him. And that's why when Tag kind of starts to freak out, they don't call their dad right away to come help them. Because, of course, Sam's being the dick and trying to say, you guys, he needs to save lives. You can't call upon him every time something bad happens. Which, I get it. A great angle to throw in here, especially when you're talking about, like, the duality of the Clark Kent Superman persona. Clark has the obligation to his family, but as Superman, he has this obligation to the world. Can he survive that? That's pretty much what we're seeing here. Turns out he can. It's very cool, very well done. I mean, I love the tension building up between Lois and Sam, and like this idea that Lois is like, you can't become father of the year all of a sudden and tell me how to raise my kids when I know exactly how you raised me. Like, you can't just sit in here and say your duty to the world makes you less obligated to be the father, because that's Sam Lane's character to a T. That's his relationship with Lois to a T. And even Clark is siding with Lois on this, like, I'm going to prioritize my kids over some things. So when you're doing your weird prison transfer with Thaddeus Kilgrave, I'm not going to be there to supervise it. You guys are capable of doing all this stuff. I don't need to be there to escort every little thing that happens. This is kind of where, like, the majority of the Superman stuff comes in this episode. So Superman goes to, like, stop Thaddeus after he does escape. Of course he escapes. You know, he's like a creepy, weird guy. Definitely going for that serial killer vibe, which, yeah, I mean, I get it. That's a weird thing to do. Metropolis is a weird place. So, you know, they get into a nice fight. He's got, like, some weird sonic gun that disrupts Superman's hearing, but the cries of his son asking for help kind of, like, lead him to break through it in a great scene. It's a very powerful scene because I'm like, that is a Superman thing to do. You are going to go where the trouble is. You want to just get this done out of the way. Big thunderclap. That was awesome. That was really cool. That made me super excited. I'm like, that's such a cool thing we don't get a lot of. So he takes down Thaddeus and all his bad guys, goes to save his sons from Tag. Very fun. Very fun. This episode just consistently proved that this show is smart and original. And it doesn't have to do like the big grandiose thing. Like, this has like very little to do with like the Luthor stuff that we saw in the past few episodes. It was kind of setting up, like I said, Intergang and Morgan Edge, which is a very cool thing to see, because that idea, I think, is going to become like a big key factor for a lot of the story going forward. I think we're going down the route of Intergang. I think we're actually going to go down, like, maybe it could introduce Cadmus instead of like doing some of the more like dark side stuff. But I think we're going down that rabbit hole of like, we're actually going to see some bad stuff happening here. It's very interesting to see. Very cool. I like it a lot. So Clark kind of decides he's going to try to be father of the year still. Him and Lois have a couple of tensions where she asks him to like help her like investigate stuff going on with Morgan Edge at the town council. He doesn't make it, so it goes through that Morgan Edge is going to work in the town. So they have the tensions. They have like a nice resolution at the end. Again, very CW, where at the end of your episode you have to have the resolution, but that's not a bad thing. Just because, you know, we're doing serialized storytelling doesn't mean it has to end on a cliffhanger every week where something bad's happening. I think that's really cool. They just have like a nice caring moment. Same with Lana. Now, Lana, I talked about her last week too. Like, I'm like, they're building up like the weird tension between Clark and Lana. They have to. Lana, in this episode, she kind of like gets in a fight with her husband because Morgan Edge like kind of hits on her in this weird sense and like gets very creepy around her, but her husband doesn't perceive that as creepy, just as like a businessman being a businessman. Like, he's obviously blind to what's going on there and his fascination with Lana. They get into an argument about it, but after going out for drinks with Lois, she starts to come to terms like, you know, he's a interesting guy, my husband, but he's still a good guy. He's a nice man. He does his job. He helps the family. I should give him more attention. I should respect him more than I do. Which is nice, because you're like, well, they could easily have went down the rabbit hole, which I still think they might. where it's like Clark and Lana, maybe they're going to accidentally kiss or something like that. Not accidentally, but in like the heat of passion, they're going to kiss because Clark's going to be weird around her or something. I still think they might go down that rabbit hole, but if they don't, I'm not surprised because we already got the tensions between Lois and Kyle, so that's enough to like build up those two having like their bond together. I think it's fun. It's very cool stuff to see. The action was great. The storytelling was great. Like, the characterization of Lana Lang in here really works because, yeah, you needed this from her. Just like that small, simple thing where she is just trying to become her own woman now. Maybe, like, the things she did in her past aren't who she wants to be going forward. That's still really cool to see. A really nice episode. The tension was satisfying. The characterizations were satisfying. I liked it a lot. Love persevered in the end, man, and that is just really cool to see. Sam Lane continues to be a really cool foil for this world. Everything about it just worked really perfectly, and I'm very impressed with what we got. We see, of course, Morgan Edge has like a weird powered person. He finds kryptonite, I should say, in like the mines, so it's like some weird type of kryptonite that could potentially stop Superman. It's really fun. Really good stuff. Everybody's just doing a really good job at this. Like the set design, the cinematography, the acting is great. I'm just really impressed that this is what we're doing. We're doing Villain of the Week Superman stuff on television again, and it's working. And it feels different than Smallville. It feels different than everything that we saw come before it, or that will potentially come after. This show just continues to surprise me in a glorious way, and I'm a big fan of it. So that is Superman and Lois episode 4. It is well worth your time. If you still haven't jumped on board this show, I recommend you do so. It's going to surprise you in a lot of great ways. So thank you guys so much for watching this review. Be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. As always, you can check me out on Instagram, Patreon, Twitter, all that good stuff. And I will catch you in the next one. Have fun, stay safe, good luck.